Oh, hey, welcome back. I'm Courtney, and this is The Accounting Struggle, where we speak about our struggles with accounting openly and honestly. We do not run from them. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about, surprise, surprise, the CPA exam. So if you are wondering why I'm always talking about the CPA exam, it's because it is always being requested. So I thought I would revisit a video that I made around this time last year. So today's video is going to be brought to you by U World Roger CPA Review. Before we get started, if you are new here, hello, welcome. Hi, I'm Courtney. And if you're returning, thank you so much for being here again. I know that the videos are becoming more and more sporadic. I keep saying that they're going to be more and more consistent, but life keeps happening. So here we are. But I'm glad you're here. Thank you for coming back. So if you are on this, or if you've been here for a while, if you've been watching my videos for a while now, you know that I was on my CPA journey for around 3 years. It took me from 2016 when I started studying all the way through 2019 to complete the CPA and get licensed. And so needless to say, I had my fair share of mistakes and things that I had to do over and retest. So I have all this experience and things that I like to help other people with when it comes to the CPA. So I am going to revisit a video that I made this time last year where I talk about my top CPA mistakes and how or why I repeatedly failed the CPA exam. So I'll link that video in the card so that you can go back and watch it if you have not already seen it. But if you are, if you've seen the video, a couple of things that I touch on, 2 points that I make in the video are that one of the biggest mistakes I made is that I spent a lot of time in the library throughout the first couple of years of studying by doing like these long marathon study sessions. I would go in the library, I would be there all day, and I just thought that that was what the process should look like. I should just study for like 12 hours in a day. I would go on a Saturday and be like, oh, I'm gonna just be here all day because that's normal, right? Instead of really thinking about getting more or doing more effective studying, I was just thinking like, oh, I need to study a lot. So that was one of the big mistakes that I touch on, and I explained why that did not work. And then the other thing was, I didn't necessarily study every day, especially in the beginning. I would kind of just study Monday through Friday, and then I would take the weekends off. And then once I started working, I was working Monday through Friday, so I really didn't study as much during the week, and I tried to cram more in on the weekends. And what I found over time was that it makes more sense to study every day, a little bit at a time, even if it's just for 30 to 45 minutes. That's more effective than to spend 12 hours in a library pretending to study when my mind is really thinking about other things because it's been 12 hours. So yeah, that wasn't very effective. It did not work out in my favor, and that was something that I learned along the way. So I recently spoke on this in another video. I think the last video that I made, I did a comparison of a few different CPA review courses, and I was able to test out U World Roger's CPA review course. I was able to get a nice little tour of it and see what all of the information on the inside looked like, because it's one thing to kind of just do a comparison for research, but I was actually able to demo the software and really see what it looks like, which is great and more helpful. Thank God I am no longer studying for the CPA exam, because what a time. But I still like to see it and stay up to date on the latest. There's always things that are changing, and people do always ask me about it, so I like to make sure that I'm staying up to date. So something that addresses the first two mistakes that I've already mentioned is through U World Roger's CPA review course. They actually have a SmartPath Predictive Technology. So what SmartPath Predictive Technology does is it uses data to compare your progress against other people who have passed using this same program, the same U World Roger software, to study and prepare for the CPA exam. So it's taking that and comparing your success and your basically every time you're doing multiple choice questions or you're doing working through the simulations, it's comparing your progress against theirs so that it can predict how well you're doing, what track you're on, and then it will kind of guide you and tell you how to study. So it's going to highlight where your strengths and your weaknesses are, and it will kind of make a study guide for you based on that information. So it uses data to predict how you're doing relative to the others who have actually passed, to try and steer you back in the right direction. So this platform is going to tell you what to study, what to focus on specifically, and how much of it to focus on. So one thing that I would say is if you have taken a section of the CPA exam already and you were not successful and you're going back and you're retaking that same section, you always want to think about where you went wrong. And usually you will, after you take your exam and you find out that you didn't pass, you'll get some type of little sheet or progress report that shows you where your performance was the weakest. Sometimes that's helpful overall, but it's not as descriptive and it doesn't really give you a basis on what specifically to focus on. It might just say like overall your simulations were not as great, or if you were taking like the BEC section, it might say overall your writing portion wasn't as great. But that's not as helpful as knowing like specifically where your areas are weaker was in the economics section if you were studying for BEC. So with the predictive technology, this allows you to see more clearly what you need to focus on, so that way you're spending enough time in those areas. So one of the other things that I touch on, and I think I even noted this as like my biggest mistake, was not truly mastering the content and not really understanding the concepts. I did a lot of game playing. Where I felt like, well, I studied it. I checked that box, it's checked off on the progress sheet. Do I understand it? Yeah, it's clear as mud, but it wasn't like I could explain it in my own words. It was like, okay, I looked at the material enough. I'm moving on to the next section because the exam is in 3 weeks and I still have 3 more chapters to cover and I have not even started to review. So it was more of a like, I need to stay on a certain path or a certain time schedule, and I wasn't really focused enough on understanding the concepts. And I did that for the first couple of years of my process throughout studying for the CPA exam. And that is something that I note as one of my biggest mistakes. So what U World Roger CPA review course does to address these types of issues when you're kind of just making or moving through the motions and you're not really understanding the content, you're not really making the effort to really get to know what it is that you're trying to learn, or maybe it's just not that clear. I was doing things like just looking at the multiple choice questions. I would read like, why is this right? Oh, okay, yeah, it's right because B and C and D are wrong. So it was just not as helpful. But what they do to address that is they just have a more exemplary content team. So for one, the actual lectures are put on by a lot more entertaining or interesting and engaging individuals. So Roger himself, he is a CPA and he is actually a lot more engaging than the software that I use to prepare for the CPA review course. So it helps to, for one, keep your attention. But the other thing is the content itself is written by CPAs, professionals in the industry, as well as educators in the industry. So you are getting the best content and you're actually getting people who have written the questions are individuals who really do this and not necessarily just people who write content for review courses. The explanations on these multiple choice questions, that's something that I think we should pull over and talk about real quick. Okay, so when you are studying and you're looking at multiple choice questions, the key to really nailing multiple choice questions and understanding the content is understanding not only why your answer is correct, but also understanding why the incorrect answers are not correct. That is so important because there's always 4 to 5 options in a multiple choice question, and usually there are 2 that are very attractive answers, and one of them is only kind of sort of a little bit wrong. It's a very attractive answer. You just want to reach out and touch it because you're like, it's giving me accuracy, but it's not correct for one reason, and you have to understand what that reason is in order to make sure that on test day or exam day you don't make the mistake of selecting that answer. So with reading over the explanations, it's important to have a program that is actually going to do a succinct job at explaining why it's not correct and why your answer is correct. What is the distinction between these 2 answers, and why is this one the correct answer and why is this one wrong? What makes it wrong? What is the wording? Is it because it says except for? Is it because it says all of? What is the reason that is this, this question is not right? So that's really, really important, and the CPA is made up of that. The entire exam is always going to come down to these little teeny tiny details, but they're very important details, and that is going to transfer over into the real world, and you will see that when you become a professional. So in the last video where I talked about my top mistakes, I also talk about how I didn't spend enough time on the simulations, which is something that you definitely do not want to make the mistake of doing. And the reason why, if I'm being honest, I used to spend less time on the simulations is because I found them to be more challenging, and that did not feed my ego to be working on something that challenged me. I didn't feel good about it as I was working through those questions or those simulations. I couldn't simply solve it. It was like, okay, here's a problem, and if you don't know how to do it, you don't know where to start. So if I have to like do the whole thing, there is no multiple choice, there's nothing to guide me. I have to know how to do the entire thing, or I can't answer this question. And now I feel stuck, and now I feel dumb, and now I'm in my head. And so that's probably not just me, that's most likely a lot of people. We like to study the things that we feel good about. So if you are killing it on a certain couple of chapters, that tends to be what you want to lean towards. Or if you know you're really good with multiple choice, you tend to want to lean towards practicing the multiple choice more. But that doesn't help to prepare you in the areas where you are weaker. So with U World Roger's spaced repetition technology in their flashcards, it allows you to mark off the ones that are more difficult and then the ones that are easy. So if you're going through a couple of the flashcards and you're like, okay, I got that right on the first try. Or if you find that there are a few where you're like, girl, I don't know, and you are marking those difficult, what will happen is the technology will recognize that, and it will show you more and more difficult ones. And it's going to show you less and less of the easy ones. So that way you're forced to address those questions or those areas that you don't really understand as well. And if that isn't helping you, it's sometimes best to go back to the actual material, go back to that section in the chapter and reread it or re-listen to the lecture so that you can get a better understanding of what this concept is. Because again, one of my other mistakes was not really fully understanding the material. So those things really help. Making sure that you are studying the difficult stuff enough and getting enough exposure to that, as well as making sure you look at the things that are not necessarily making you feel all fluffy, like the simulations. So those are some of the things that I wish that I would have done the first time. I could have saved myself a lot of time and money, but it is what it is. Here we are. The accounting struggles birthed through my struggles with accounting, so it is what it is. But those are some things that you can do to save yourself the time and headache. So anyway, I wanted to just do this video to revisit some of the mistakes that I've made, because I know a lot of you are still very much on your CPA journey. Some of you are just getting started, and I would hate to see you waste as much time and endure as much anguish as I did throughout my process. So there are a ton of different CPA review courses. I have another video where I'm comparing a few of them. I'll link that here. But U World Roger has a more comprehensive exam review, and I really like that they use incorporate certain technology to help gear you into the direction that you need to be, to help keep you on the right path so that you're successful in passing the CPA exam. So definitely look into their program. I will link all of the information in the description box if you are interested. And yeah, I hope that you found this video to be helpful. If you did, of course, be sure and give it a thumbs up, like, comment, subscribe, share, all those good things. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.